Long before maps had names for these mountains, the Cherokee spoke of something living in the high country that no explorer ever wanted to meet after dark. Pale, small, and impossibly old, they called them the moon-eyed people. Some stories say they vanished. Others aren't so sure. Tonight we start where the legend begins, in the fog, above the tree line, where the old world still watches. The Cherokee moon-eyed people high in the Appalachian ridgelines, where fog settles into the valleys like something alive, the Cherokee people once spoke of a group unlike any other. They called them the Nunadies, strange cousins in some tellings, but most simply knew them as the moon-eyed people, a name that, once heard, is hard to forget. The story goes that these were not ordinary people. Their skin was pale, almost colorless, as if it had never once felt direct sun. Their eyes were large and sensitive, unable to bear daylight without pain. By day they stayed hidden in the deep hollows and cave systems that riddle the southern mountains. By night, when the moon rose over the ridgelines, they moved freely, working, watching, living a life built entirely around darkness. For the Cherokee, this was not a campfire tale told simply to frighten children. It was part of a much older understanding of the land itself, the idea that these mountains had been inhabited long before their own ancestors arrived, that the ridges and hollows carried memory stretching back further than anyone could account for. In many versions of the story, the moon-eyed people were already here, already settled into the caves and rock shelters when the Cherokee's own ancestors first walked into these valleys. What makes this story endure, generation after generation, is not just the strangeness of the people it describes, but the way it reflects something deeply true about how oral tradition works. These stories were never meant to be simple entertainment. They were a way of explaining the land, why certain caves were avoided, why certain ridgelines felt different after sunset, why elders warned younger generations not to wander too far into particular hollows once the light began to fade. The legend and the landscape were inseparable. To understand one was to understand the other. Early European settlers, arriving centuries later, added their own layer to the story. Some claim to have heard similar accounts from other tribes in the region, describing as small, pale people who avoided sunlight and kept almost entirely to themselves. Whether these settler accounts were independent confirmations of an older tradition, or simply settlers absorbing and reshaping Cherokee stories they'd heard secondhand, is something history has never fully settled. What's clear is that the story did not stay contained within a single community. It traveled mountain to mountain, valley to valley, picking up new details as it went, the way stories do when they matter to the people telling them. There's something worth sitting with here. The fact that a story about hidden, light-averse people would take root so firmly in a landscape defined by shadow. The Appalachian Range isn't dramatic in the way of jagged, towering peaks. Its power is quieter. Mist clings to the hollows well past sunrise. Caves and rock overhangs sit tucked into hillsides, easy to miss unless you know exactly where to look. It's a landscape built for things to hide in, and for a people whose defining trait was an aversion to light, there could hardly be a more fitting home. The word moon-eyed itself carries a kind of built-in unease. It suggests eyes reflecting light the way an animal's do at night, eyes made for darkness rather than day. Whether the name arose from actual physical descriptions passed down through generations, or from something more symbolic, a way of describing people who lived by an entirely different rhythm than everyone else, is difficult to know with certainty. Oral traditions rarely separate the literal from the symbolic as cleanly as we might like. Often they weren't meant to be separated at all. The truth of a story like this lived in what it taught, not necessarily in whether every detail could be independently verified. What's easy to miss looking at the story from a distance is how ordinary its telling would have been. This wasn't presented as an extraordinary claim requiring proof. It was simply part of the accepted history of the land, passed the same way any other piece of ancestral knowledge was passed, through hunting trips, through evenings around a fire, through the kind of casual conversation that carries more weight than it seems to at the time. A grandmother mentioning, almost in passing, why a particular hollow should be avoided after dusk. A hunter noting that something about a certain ridge never felt quite right once the sun dropped low. These are the mechanisms through which a story like this survives for centuries, not through dramatic retelling, but through quiet, repeated acknowledgement that it was simply true. There is also something worth noting about what this story does not do. It doesn't offer a dramatic climax. There's no singular, defining battle or event that explains what became of the moon-eyed people. In most versions, they simply recede from the narrative, driven off, moved on, or absorbed into the deeper folds of the mountains, depending on which telling you encounter. That lack of resolution is, in its own way, part of what makes the story so persistent. Unresolved things tend to linger in a way that neatly finished ones do not. A story with a clear ending closes itself off. A story that simply trails into mist invites you to keep wondering, keep listening, keep looking a little more closely at the next cave mouth you pass. It's worth remembering, too, that stories like this were never separate from the practical business of living in a place like the Appalachian Range. The mountains here are old, some of the oldest on the continent, worn down by time into rounded ridges and deep, shadowed hollows. Living among them for generations meant developing an intimate, working knowledge of where danger might hide, where the ground could not be trusted after dark, where a misstep could mean real consequence. Stories about hidden, light-averse people were, in part, a way of encoding that caution into something memorable. Warnings dressed as legend tend to survive far longer than warnings dressed as simple instruction. None of this diminishes the story. If anything, it deepens it. The moon-eyed people endure not because anyone insists they were literal, verifiable beings documented in some forgotten ledger, but because the story itself does real work. It explains a landscape. It encodes caution. It reflects a relationship with land and darkness that outsiders, arriving centuries later with their own assumptions, could sense but never fully inherit. And that, in the end, is what makes a story like this worth returning to. Not a demand that you believe it outright, but an invitation to notice how thoroughly it fits the place it comes from, the fog that never quite lifts before mid-morning, the caves tucked just out of easy sight, the sense, however faint, that some corners of these old mountains have never entirely stopped watching back. The Hopi Blue Star Prophecy. The Hopi Blue Star Prophecy is one of the most discussed Native American prophecies in modern times, yet it is also one of the most misunderstood. Across books, documentaries, and countless online discussions, it is often presented as a dramatic prediction of the world's end. But within the traditions from which it comes, the Hopi Blue Star Prophecy carries a much deeper meaning, one centered not on fear, but on balance, responsibility, and the repeating cycles of life. For generations, the Hopi people have lived in the high desert of what is now the American Southwest. Their villages stand among mesas, sandstone cliffs, and vast open skies where every sunrise and every changing season hold significance. Life in this environment has always depended on understanding the rhythms of nature. Rain, drought, harvests, and the movement of the stars were never viewed as separate from human life. Instead, they formed part of a single living system. Within that world view, stories were never simply stories. Teachings were carefully passed from one generation to the next, preserving knowledge about how people should live in harmony with the natural world. The Hopi Blue Star Prophecy belongs to this larger tradition. Rather than functioning as a prediction designed to frighten people, it reflects a philosophy that emphasizes personal responsibility, respect for the earth, and the consequences of losing balance. The name itself immediately captures attention. The phrase, Blue Star, has inspired decades of speculation. Some interpret it literally, imagining a celestial object that will appear in the sky. Others connect it to astronomical events or unusual natural phenomena. These interpretations have become popular in modern culture, often spreading far beyond the original teachings. Yet the Hopi Blue Star Prophecy is far more layered than these simplified versions suggest. According to traditional understanding, existence moves through repeating cycles. Human societies rise, change, decline, and begin again. These cycles are not random. They are shaped by the choices people make and by the relationship they maintain with the world around them. When harmony is preserved, communities thrive. When balance is ignored, difficulties follow. This idea appears repeatedly throughout Hopi teachings and provides the foundation for understanding the Hopi Blue Star Prophecy. Rather than focusing on a single dramatic event, the prophecy encourages reflection on how humanity responds during periods of great change. That message has become increasingly relevant in the modern world. As technology has transformed daily life, many people find themselves searching for meaning in traditions that encourage patience, humility, and respect for nature. It is perhaps no surprise that the Hopi Blue Star prophecy continues to attract attention. It speaks to universal concerns about change, uncertainty, and the future. However, that popularity has also created challenges. Over the years, countless websites, books, and videos have presented their own versions of the prophecy. Some claim it predicts exact dates or specific disasters. Others combine it with unrelated beliefs from entirely different cultures. These interpretations often spread quickly because they offer dramatic explanations for uncertain times. The difficulty is that many of these modern versions move far beyond the original teachings. The Hopi Blue Star prophecy has frequently been separated from its cultural roots, making it easy for misunderstandings to grow. What began as a sacred teaching about balance is sometimes transformed into a sensational prediction that no longer reflects its original purpose. This distinction matters. The Hopi people have preserved their traditions through generations of oral teaching, where stories are shared within a cultural context that gives them meaning. Removing a single prophecy from that wider framework risks changing its message entirely. When viewed within its traditional setting, the Hopi Blue Star prophecy encourages reflection rather than fear. It reminds listeners that every generation faces moments of uncertainty. Societies experience periods of growth and decline. Natural environments change. Human choices influence the future. None of these ideas depend on dramatic supernatural events. Instead, they describe realities that every civilization eventually encounters. The landscape itself reinforces these lessons. The Hopi homeland is defined by immense open skies, where stars dominate the night, and the changing seasons can be observed with remarkable clarity. For countless generations, careful observation of the heavens helped guide agriculture, ceremonies, and community life. In such an environment, the sky naturally became a powerful source of symbolism. The Hopi Blue Star prophecy reflects the steep relationship between the heavens and the earth. Rather than separating spiritual teachings from the natural world, the prophecy connects them. The movement of celestial bodies becomes a reminder that everything exists within larger cycles beyond any single human lifetime. This perspective offers a different way of thinking about history. Modern culture often views history as a straight line moving steadily forward. The Hopi worldview, however, emphasizes cycles. What happens today influences tomorrow, but today's actions also echo patterns that have appeared many times before. The Hopi Blue Star prophecy fits naturally within this understanding. Its enduring mystery lies not in whether a particular event can be identified, but in how each generation interprets its message. Every era believes it is living through extraordinary change. Every generation wonders whether it stands at a turning point in history. These questions help explain why the prophecy continues to resonate. People searching for certainty are often drawn to predictions that appear to explain the future. Yet the Hopi Blue Star prophecy offers something more subtle. Instead of promising precise answers, it asks individuals to consider their own role in maintaining balance with one another and with the environment. That lesson remains timeless. The continued fascination surrounding the Hopi Blue Star prophecy demonstrates how easily sacred traditions can become intertwined with modern speculation. Popular culture often prefers dramatic narratives, while traditional teachings frequently encourage quiet reflection. The difference between these approaches is significant. One seeks certainty, the other invites wisdom. This is one reason the Hopi Blue Star prophecy continues to inspire respectful discussion among historians, cultural researchers, and those interested in indigenous traditions. The prophecy cannot be understood simply by isolating a few dramatic phrases. Its meaning emerges from the broader philosophy that has shaped Hopi life for generations. Like many Native American oral traditions, it reflects a relationship with the land that extends far beyond written history. The mesas, deserts, and vast horizons of the Southwest are more than landscapes. They are places where stories, ceremonies, and daily life became inseparable. Every teaching carries echoes of the environment in which it was preserved. The Hopi Blue Star prophecy is no exception. Its enduring influence reminds us that some mysteries cannot be solved through archaeology or historical documents alone. Instead, they invite us to understand how cultures preserve knowledge across centuries without relying on written records. Whether viewed as a sacred teaching, a philosophical guide, or one of the most intriguing Native American mysteries, The Hopi Blue Star prophecy continues to challenge simple explanations. It encourages careful thought rather than quick conclusions, asking each generation to consider how its choices shape the future. Perhaps that is why the Hopi Blue Star prophecy has endured for so long. Not because it offers easy predictions, but because it raises enduring questions about humanity's relationship with nature, with time, and with itself. In a world constantly searching for certainty, the prophecy quietly reminds us that wisdom often begins with balance, and that some of history's greatest mysteries are meant to inspire reflection rather than provide definitive answers. The Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files. Among all the stories shared across Native American traditions, few are as unusual as the reports connected to the Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files. Unlike legends that exist only in distant history, these accounts are often described within a modern setting, where law enforcement officers, emergency responders, and local residents travel the same isolated landscapes every day. It is here, where ancient traditions meet modern patrol routes, that the Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files have captured widespread attention. The Navajo Nation covers an immense area across Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. It is the largest Native American reservation in the United States, stretching across deserts, canyons, mesas, forests, and remote mountain ranges. Many regions remain remarkably isolated, with long distances separating homes, communities, and roads. For those unfamiliar with the land, the silence can feel overwhelming. Miles of open desert give way to towering sandstone cliffs. Ancient rock formations cast long shadows across empty valleys. At night, the darkness becomes almost complete, interrupted only by stars that seem close enough to touch. It is a landscape where nature commands respect, and where generations have developed a deep understanding of places that outsiders may never fully know. Within this environment, the Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files occupy a unique place. Unlike fictional ghost stories created for entertainment, these accounts are often presented as reports collected by Navajo Rangers while performing ordinary duties. Their responsibilities include protecting natural resources, assisting visitors, enforcing regulations, and responding to incidents across vast areas of tribal land. Most of their work is routine. They patrol archaeological sites, help stranded travelers, investigate damaged property, monitor wildlife, and respond to emergencies in remote locations. Yet over the years, some rangers have spoken about encounters that proved far more difficult to explain. These unusual experiences gradually became known as the Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files. The phrase itself has sparked enormous curiosity because it combines two ideas that rarely appear together. On one hand are trained law enforcement officers whose work depends on careful observation and factual reporting. On the other are stories involving strange events that seem to resist ordinary explanation. That contrast is exactly what makes the Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files so compelling. Rather than rushing toward extraordinary conclusions, many accounts simply describe situations that left experienced officers with unanswered questions. The focus is often not on proving supernatural activity, but on documenting encounters that did not fit easily within familiar explanations. This careful approach has become one of the defining characteristics of the Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files. The stories exist in a region where oral traditions have long emphasized respect for the land and for places considered spiritually significant. Within Navajo culture, certain locations carry deep cultural meaning, and many traditions encourage people to approach them with humility rather than curiosity. Understanding that cultural context is essential. Without it, the Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files can easily be misunderstood as simple collections of ghost stories. In reality, they exist at the intersection of modern public service and centuries of indigenous knowledge about the landscape. For generations, elders have shared teachings that encourage respect for places whose histories extend far beyond living memory. These teachings are not necessarily intended to frighten people. Instead, they often serve as reminders that human understanding has limits and that some places deserve caution simply because of their cultural significance. The Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files reflect this same attitude. Many reports describe rangers approaching unusual situations with professionalism rather than fear. Their first responsibility is always to determine whether a practical explanation exists. Weather conditions, wildlife activity, natural sounds, or environmental hazards are all considered before anything unusual is suggested. Only when ordinary possibilities fail to provide satisfying answers do certain cases remain memorable. This measured response has helped distinguish the Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files from sensational folklore. Instead of making dramatic claims, the accounts often leave important questions unresolved. That uncertainty has fueled decades of discussion. Researchers interested in indigenous traditions frequently note that many Native American communities maintain a different relationship with the natural world than modern Western culture. Rather than viewing the landscape as something separate from human life, it is often understood as an active part of existence, deserving of respect and careful attention. The Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files are often interpreted through that broader perspective. They remind listeners that not every mystery demands an immediate explanation. Sometimes the most responsible response is simply to acknowledge that an event occurred while admitting that its cause remains uncertain. This idea may seem unfamiliar in a society that often expects quick answers. Modern technology encourages immediate conclusions. Satellite imagery, digital maps, and scientific instruments have transformed our understanding of the world. Yet even today, enormous areas of wilderness remain difficult to study in detail. The Navajo Nation is one such place. Its vast deserts, hidden canyons, and isolated plateaus create conditions where unusual experiences can easily leave lasting impressions. The environment itself encourages humility. Weather changes rapidly. Distances can be deceptive. Silence dominates the landscape. Within this setting, the Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files continue to attract attention because they combine professional observation with cultural respect. Another reason these accounts remain so fascinating is that they avoid simple categories. They are not presented as proven scientific discoveries. They are not framed as entertainment, nor are they offered as unquestionable supernatural evidence. Instead, the Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files occupy the space between certainty and mystery. They encourage careful listening while reminding us that not every experience can be neatly explained. This balanced perspective reflects an important principle found throughout many indigenous traditions. Knowledge is valuable. Experience is valuable. Respect is essential. These values shape how unusual events are discussed. Rather than seeking publicity, the emphasis often remains on learning from the land and maintaining harmony with places that have been respected for countless generations. The Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files therefore become more than collections of unexplained reports. They represent an ongoing dialogue between ancient cultural knowledge and modern responsibilities. Rangers travel roads that cross landscapes inhabited by native communities for centuries. Every patrol passes archaeological sites, sacred areas, and places whose stories extend far beyond written history. That continuity gives the accounts remarkable depth. Whether someone interprets the Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files as unexplained natural events, cultural traditions, or simply unusual experiences recorded by experienced professionals, they remain deeply connected to the land itself. Perhaps that is their greatest mystery. The stories rarely ask listeners to believe extraordinary claims without question. Instead, they encourage something far more thoughtful. They invite respect. Respect for history. Respect for indigenous knowledge. Respect for landscapes that continue to shape the lives of those who know them best. In many ways, the Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files remind us that mystery is not always something to be solved. Sometimes it serves another purpose. It encourages humility in places where certainty is impossible, and where generations have learned that understanding begins with careful observation rather than quick judgment. That lesson may explain why the Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files continue to capture imaginations today. Not because every question has an answer, but because they reveal how modern life can still intersect with traditions that have endured for centuries. They show that even in an age of advanced technology, there remain places where history, culture, and the natural world combine to create experiences that resist simple explanation. The Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files stand as one of the most intriguing Native American mysteries because they are rooted not only in stories, but also in the enduring relationship between people and one of North America's most remarkable landscapes. In that vast desert, where ancient traditions remain closely tied to the land, the greatest mystery may not be what was witnessed, but how much of the landscape's history still waits to be understood. The Lovelock Cave red-haired giants among the many mysteries preserved through Native American oral traditions, few have generated as much debate as the story of the Lovelock Cave red-haired giants. It is a mystery where archaeology, indigenous history, and oral storytelling appear to intersect, yet they do not always arrive at the same conclusions. For more than a century, researchers, historians, and curious visitors have returned to one place in northern Nevada, asking the same question: what really happened inside Lovelock Cave? The Lovelock Cave red-haired giant's mystery begins in a harsh but remarkable landscape. Northern Nevada is known for its dry basins, rugged mountains, and vast stretches of desert. Thousands of years ago, however, parts of this region looked very different. Ancient lakes covered large portions of the land, providing water, fish, birds, and other resources that supported human communities for generations. One of the places connected to this ancient world is Lovelock Cave. Located above what was once a much larger lake, the cave offered natural shelter for people over thousands of years. Because the region remained extremely dry, many objects left behind inside the cave were unusually well preserved. Items made from plant fibers, tools, baskets, and other materials survived far longer than they would have in wetter climates. For archaeologists, Lovelock Cave became an extraordinary sight. Excavations revealed evidence of long periods of human occupation, helping researchers better understand how ancient communities adapted to the challenging environment. Every layer of the cave preserved another chapter of life in prehistoric Nevada. Yet alongside these archaeological discoveries existed another story. For generations, members of the Northern Paiute people preserved oral traditions describing powerful beings remembered in connection with the region. Over time, these stories became linked with what is now widely known as the Lovelock Cave red-haired giant's mystery. According to the traditions, these unusual figures were remembered as being much larger than ordinary people. One of the most frequently discussed details involved their reddish-colored hair, a feature that later became central to the legend itself. As the story spread beyond native communities, public interest grew rapidly. The combination of archaeological discoveries and indigenous oral traditions encouraged many people to search for direct connections between the two. Newspapers, books, and documentaries began presenting increasingly dramatic versions of the Lovelock Cave red-haired giant's mystery, often suggesting that remarkable discoveries had been made inside the cave. This is where careful distinction becomes important. Archaeology and oral tradition are valuable sources of knowledge, but they do not always answer the same kinds of questions. Archaeologists study physical evidence preserved in the ground, while indigenous oral traditions preserve cultural memory through storytelling passed from one generation to another. The Lovelock Cave red-haired giant's mystery exists precisely where those two approaches meet. Excavations at Lovelock Cave unquestionably uncovered important archaeological material. Ancient tools, woven artifacts, and evidence of long-term human activity have all contributed significantly to understanding prehistoric life in the Great Basin region. At the same time, the Paiute oral traditions continued, preserving stories that held cultural meaning, independent of archaeological findings. Whether these two sources describe the same events remains uncertain. That uncertainty has allowed the Lovelock Cave red-haired giant's mystery to endure for generations. One reason the story remains so captivating is the remarkable preservation of the cave itself. Dry conditions protected delicate objects that would normally decay within decades. Walking into the cave today, it is easy to imagine why early archaeologists considered it one of the most important sites in the American West. Every artifact recovered helped reconstruct another piece of ancient history. Yet none of those discoveries completely resolved the questions raised by the oral traditions. Instead, the mystery became even more complex. Modern discussions surrounding the Lovelock Cave red-haired giants often reveal how easily legends can become exaggerated. Over the years, countless sensational claims have circulated online, many describing discoveries that have never been confirmed through reliable archaeological research. Professional archaeologists generally urge caution when evaluating these claims. Extraordinary stories deserve careful investigation, but conclusions must be supported by evidence. Without that evidence, speculation can easily overshadow genuine historical discoveries. This careful approach does not diminish the importance of indigenous traditions. On the contrary, many historians now recognize that oral histories often preserve valuable cultural knowledge extending back centuries. They provide perspectives that written records cannot always capture and help explain how communities understood their own past. The Lovelock Cave red-haired giants therefore remain significant even when their exact historical identity cannot be confirmed. their story reflects how memory survives across generations. It also illustrates how archaeology and oral tradition sometimes ask different questions. Archaeology asks what physical evidence remains. Oral tradition asks what communities chose to remember. Neither approach automatically invalidates the other. Instead, together they create a richer understanding of the past. The landscape surrounding Lovelock Cave adds another dimension to the mystery. The Nevada desert appears quiet at first glance, yet it preserves countless traces of ancient life. Dry lake beds hint at vanished environments. Rocky hills conceal forgotten campsites. Hidden caves protect evidence left behind by people who adapted to extraordinary changes over thousands of years. Against this backdrop, the Lovelock Cave red-haired giants become part of a much larger story about survival, migration, and cultural memory. The mystery is no longer simply about unusual figures described in legend. It becomes a reflection of how human history is remembered differently depending on the source. Some memories survive through artifacts, others survive through stories. Both deserve thoughtful consideration. The enduring fascination surrounding the Lovelock Cave red-haired giants also reveals something about human curiosity itself. Whenever archaeology uncovers evidence from distant civilizations, people naturally wonder what else might still lie hidden beneath the surface. Could there be discoveries yet to be made? Could future research provide new insights into the traditions preserved by indigenous communities? Or will the mystery remain unresolved, continuing to inspire discussion without offering complete certainty? No one knows. What is clear is that Lovelock Cave continues to hold extraordinary historical importance, regardless of how one interprets the legend. Its archaeological record has expanded our understanding of ancient North America, while the oral traditions connected to the region continue reminding us that history is preserved in more than one way. The Lovelock Cave red-haired giants remain one of the most intriguing Native American mysteries, not because every question has been answered, but because the story encourages careful listening. It asks us to respect scientific research without dismissing cultural memory. It reminds us that indigenous oral traditions represent generations of accumulated knowledge. And it demonstrates that some of history's most enduring mysteries emerge not from a lack of evidence, but from the meeting of different ways of understanding the past. Today, visitors standing outside Lovelock Cave see a quiet opening in the Nevada hills. The wind moves across the desert much as it has for thousands of years. Few places reveal their history immediately. Yet, beneath the surface of that silent landscape lies one of North America's most fascinating intersections of archaeology and tradition. The mystery of the Lovelock Cave red-haired giants continues to invite respectful curiosity, reminding us that history is rarely as simple as it first appears, and that some of its greatest questions remain hidden between the artifacts we uncover and the stories we continue to preserve. The Inuit tornid giants far above the Arctic Circle, where the frozen landscape stretches beyond the horizon and winter darkness can last for months. Stories have always been more than entertainment. For Inuit communities, oral traditions have preserved knowledge essential for survival in one of the world's harshest environments. Among these enduring traditions is the mystery of the Inuit tornid giants, a story that has fascinated generations and continues to spark questions that history has never fully answered. The Inuit tornid giants are remembered in Inuit oral traditions as an ancient people who lived in the Arctic before the ancestors of today's Inuit communities settled across the region. Unlike ordinary legends about supernatural beings, the Tornit are often described as a real people who occupied the land long ago, leaving behind stories that blurred the line between history and folklore. Descriptions of the Inuit Tornit giants vary across different communities, but several themes appear again and again. The Tornit were remembered as remarkably strong. They were said to possess great physical power, allowing them to carry heavy loads, move across difficult terrain, and survive in conditions that challenged even experienced hunters. Some traditions also describe them as being much larger than ordinary people, leading to the modern nickname, the Inuit Tornit Giants. Yet despite this impressive strength, the stories often portray them as peaceful rather than aggressive. In many accounts, the Inuit Tornit Giants preferred to avoid unnecessary conflict. Instead of seeking confrontation, they were remembered as people who gradually withdrew into the remote Arctic wilderness whenever other communities approached. This detail has become one of the most intriguing parts of the mystery. Unlike stories centered on dramatic battles or extraordinary victories, The legend of the Inuit Tornit giants often emphasizes disappearance rather than conquest. Over time, they simply became less visible, eventually fading from the historical record while remaining alive in oral tradition. That gradual disappearance has inspired generations of speculation. Who were the Inuit Tornit giants? Were they an actual community remembered through centuries of storytelling? Could the traditions preserve distant memories of encounters between different Arctic cultures? Or do the stories symbolize an older way of life that slowly disappeared as new populations arrived? These questions remain unanswered. The Arctic itself helps explain why mysteries like the Inuit Tornit giants have endured for so long. Few environments on Earth are as demanding. Endless snowfields, frozen coastlines, drifting sea ice, powerful winds, and months of darkness shape every aspect of daily life. Survival has always depended upon careful observation, cooperation, and an intimate understanding of the natural world. In such conditions, oral tradition became one of the most valuable forms of knowledge. Every story preserved practical lessons alongside cultural memory. Elders taught younger generations how to recognize dangerous weather, navigate unfamiliar terrain, respect wildlife, and understand the history of the land itself. The story of the Inuit Tornit giants exists within this broader tradition. Rather than standing alone as an isolated legend, it forms part of a larger body of knowledge connecting people to the Arctic landscape. Researchers have long noted that indigenous oral traditions sometimes preserve memories extending back many generations. Although details naturally evolve over time, certain themes remain remarkably consistent. The Inuit Tornit giants are one example of this continuity. Across different versions of the story, listeners repeatedly encounter descriptions of an earlier people who possessed exceptional strength and gradually disappeared from the regions they once inhabited. These repeated themes encourage careful consideration. Historians generally avoid treating oral traditions as literal historical records, yet they also recognize that dismissing them entirely overlooks valuable cultural perspectives. The Inuit Tornit giants remind us that oral history often preserves questions that archaeology alone cannot answer. Unlike warmer climates, the Arctic presents unique challenges for archaeological research. Ice, snow, seasonal changes, and remote locations make excavation difficult. Many ancient sites remain inaccessible for much of the year, while others have been altered by thousands of years of environmental change. As a result, understanding Arctic history often requires combining archaeological evidence with indigenous knowledge preserved through oral tradition. The Inuit Tornit giants occupy exactly this meeting point. They exist where physical evidence becomes limited and cultural memory continues carrying stories across generations. This balance between archaeology and tradition is one reason the mystery remains so compelling. Neither source provides a complete picture on its own. Together, however, they encourage a deeper appreciation for the complexity of Arctic history. The landscape itself reinforces the mystery. Imagine standing on a frozen coastline beneath an endless winter sky. The wind carries across open ice. Snow-covered mountains rise in the distance. Every sound travels across the frozen landscape with startling clarity. In such an environment, it becomes easier to understand why stories connected to the land remain deeply meaningful. The Inuit Tornit giants are remembered not only because of their unusual descriptions, but because they belong to this extraordinary world of survival, endurance, and respect for nature. Modern discussions surrounding the Inuit Tornit giants sometimes drift toward sensational explanations. Claims occasionally appear suggesting remarkable discoveries or hidden evidence that completely solves the mystery. Professional researchers generally approach these claims with caution. Extraordinary conclusions require extraordinary evidence, and at present, no single discovery has conclusively explained the origins of the Inuit Tornit giants' traditions. That uncertainty is precisely what keeps the mystery alive. Instead of offering simple answers, the stories encourage thoughtful questions. How much history survives through oral tradition? How much has been lost to time? How many ancient encounters remain hidden within stories passed carefully from one generation to another? These questions extend far beyond the Arctic. Many indigenous cultures preserve traditions describing earlier peoples who once inhabited the land. Sometimes archaeology later confirms parts of those traditions. Other times the stories remain open to interpretation, preserving memories that cannot yet be fully explained. The Inuit Tornit Giants belong to this fascinating category of enduring cultural mysteries. For Inuit communities, however, the importance of the stories reaches beyond historical curiosity. They represent continuity. They preserve connections between ancestors, landscapes, and generations who depended upon shared knowledge to survive. Every retelling strengthens those connections, ensuring that the wisdom carried within the stories is not forgotten. Perhaps this is why the Inuit Tornit Giants continue to capture imaginations today. The mystery is not built solely upon the possibility of unusual people who once lived in the Arctic. It is built upon something even more enduring: the power of memory. Across centuries of snowstorms, migrations, changing climates, and expanding modern settlements, the story has survived. It reminds us that history is not measured only through written documents or archaeological discoveries. Sometimes history lives in voices. Sometimes it survives in stories told beside warm fires during long Arctic winters. Sometimes it remains hidden within traditions that continue shaping communities long after the original events have faded from view. The Inuit Tornit Giants remain one of North America's most fascinating Native American mysteries because they invite us to consider both science and tradition with equal respect. Whether they represent an ancient Arctic people, a symbolic memory of changing cultures, or a mystery that future research may better illuminate, their story continues to endure across one of the most breathtaking landscapes on Earth. In the end, the silence of the Arctic, where ice preserves traces of the distant past and oral tradition carries memories through countless generations, the mystery of the Inuit Tornit Giants remains as vast as the frozen horizon itself, an enduring reminder that some of history's oldest questions still wait beneath the snow, patiently resisting easy answers. White Buffalo Woman, among the many sacred traditions preserved by Native American communities, few carry the same spiritual significance as the story of White Buffalo Woman. Unlike mysteries centered on forgotten civilizations or unexplained encounters, the mystery of White Buffalo Woman is deeply rooted in faith, renewal, and the relationship between humanity and the natural world. For the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota peoples, White Buffalo Woman is not simply a figure from the distant past. Her story remains a living part of cultural identity, spiritual practice, and traditional teachings that continue to guide generations today. The mystery of White Buffalo Woman begins on the vast Great Plains of North America. For thousands of years, these rolling grasslands stretched endlessly beneath open skies, supporting immense herds of buffalo and providing everything needed for communities to survive. Food, clothing, shelter, and tools all depended upon the land and the animals that lived there. Survival required balance, gratitude, and respect for every resource nature provided. Within this world, stories carried extraordinary importance. They preserved history, they explained sacred traditions, they taught younger generations how to live with wisdom and responsibility. Among these treasured teachings, the story of White Buffalo Woman became one of the most meaningful. According to the traditional narrative, White Buffalo Woman appeared during a time when people faced hardship and uncertainty. Her arrival was unlike anything the community had experienced before. Rather than bringing fear, she brought guidance. Rather than offering power through force, she introduced teachings centered on harmony, respect, and spiritual renewal. It is this message that has allowed the mystery of White Buffalo Woman to endure for centuries. Unlike many legends that focus on extraordinary battles or supernatural displays, the story emphasizes transformation through wisdom. White Buffalo Woman is remembered as a messenger whose purpose was to restore balance between people, the earth, and the Creator. This distinction is important. Modern audiences sometimes approach Native American traditions expecting dramatic tales filled with mysterious creatures or unexplained events. The mystery of White Buffalo Woman follows a different path. Its enduring power comes not from spectacle but from the values it teaches. Respect, gratitude, responsibility. These principles remain at the heart of the tradition. For the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota peoples, the appearance of White Buffalo Woman represents a turning point in spiritual understanding. Through her teachings, communities were reminded that every action carries consequences and that maintaining harmony with nature is essential for both individual and collective well-being. This relationship with the natural world forms one of the strongest themes within the mystery of White Buffalo Woman. The buffalo itself has long held profound significance across the Great Plains. It sustained entire communities, making survival possible in an environment where resources could change dramatically with the seasons. Respect for the buffalo naturally became intertwined with gratitude for life itself. Within this cultural setting, the story of White Buffalo Woman takes on even greater meaning. Her connection to the buffalo symbolizes far more than a single animal. It reflects abundance, renewal, generosity, and the understanding that humans are part of a much larger living system. Over countless generations, the mystery of White Buffalo Woman has been preserved through oral tradition. Unlike written histories, oral traditions depend upon careful storytelling passed from elders to younger members of the community. Every retelling strengthens cultural identity while preserving lessons that remain relevant regardless of changing times. This continuity helps explain why White Buffalo Woman continues to be remembered today. The story is not viewed simply as an event from long ago. It is understood as an ongoing source of guidance. That living connection distinguishes the mystery of White Buffalo Woman from many historical legends. Rather than belonging entirely to the past, it continues influencing ceremonies, cultural teachings, and spiritual life within Native communities. As interest in indigenous traditions has grown worldwide, the story of White Buffalo Woman has attracted increasing attention beyond the communities where it originated. Unfortunately, that attention has sometimes led to misunderstandings. Modern interpretations occasionally remove the story from its cultural context or reshape it into something entirely different from its original meaning. Symbolic teachings may become sensationalized, while deeply spiritual lessons are sometimes presented merely as mysterious folklore. Such interpretations overlook what makes the mystery of White Buffalo Woman truly remarkable. Its greatest mystery is not whether extraordinary events occurred exactly as described. Its greatest mystery lies in how one story has preserved values, identity, and hope across countless generations. Researchers studying indigenous oral traditions often emphasize that stories like White Buffalo Woman cannot be understood fully without appreciating the cultures that continue to preserve them. The narrative is inseparable from the people who tell it. It reflects a worldview in which nature, spirituality, and everyday life exist together rather than as separate ideas. This perspective differs significantly from many modern approaches to history. Western historical research often focuses on dates, documents, and physical evidence. Indigenous oral traditions frequently emphasize relationships, memory, and lived experience. The mystery of White Buffalo Woman demonstrates how these different ways of preserving knowledge can exist side by side without diminishing one another. The Great Plains themselves reinforce the emotional power of the story. Standing beneath an endless prairie sky, surrounded by open grasslands stretching toward the horizon, it becomes easier to understand why balance with nature occupies such an important place in indigenous teachings. The landscape encourages humility. Storms arrive without warning. Seasons transform the land. Wildlife follows ancient migration routes. Human life depends upon understanding these natural rhythms rather than attempting to control them. The mystery of White Buffalo Woman reflects this same philosophy. Instead of promising certainty, it encourages respect. Instead of emphasizing domination over nature, it teaches coexistence. These ideas continue resonating far beyond the Great Plains. In today's rapidly changing world, many people find themselves searching for ways to reconnect with the environment and with one another. Although cultures differ greatly, the message carried within the story of White Buffalo Woman remains surprisingly universal. Balance matters. Gratitude matters. The choices people make today shape the future they leave behind. Perhaps this explains why the mystery of White Buffalo Woman continues inspiring thoughtful discussion among historians, cultural scholars, and people interested in Native American traditions. Its influence extends beyond questions of history. It invites reflection. How do communities preserve wisdom across centuries? How do stories continue guiding people long after they were first told? Why do certain teachings remain meaningful despite generations of change? The story offers no simple answers. Instead, it encourages careful listening. That may be its greatest strength. The mystery of White Buffalo Woman has survived not because every detail can be examined through archaeology or written records, but because it continues living within the communities that treasure it. As long as those teachings are remembered, the story remains alive. Across the windswept plains where buffalo once roamed in vast numbers, the legacy of White Buffalo Woman continues to remind people that history is more than a collection of dates or artifacts. Sometimes history lives through values passed from one generation to the next. The mystery of White Buffalo Woman endures because it speaks not only about the past, but also about the enduring relationship between humanity, the natural world, and the wisdom carried through tradition. In that enduring connection lies a mystery that cannot be measured by excavation or explained by simple answers, a mystery that continues to inspire respect, reflection, and hope across generations. The forbidden sacred caves of the Apache, hidden among the rugged mountains and sun-scorched deserts of the American Southwest, lies one of the most respected mysteries in Native American tradition. The forbidden sacred caves of the Apache. Unlike stories centered on mysterious beings or unexplained creatures, the mystery of the forbidden sacred caves of the Apache revolves around places themselves. These caves have long been remembered not as ordinary shelters or landmarks, but as sacred spaces whose significance extends far beyond what can be seen from the outside. The Apache people have lived across the mountains, deserts, and high plateaus of the Southwest for countless generations. Their homeland is a landscape of towering cliffs, hidden canyons, narrow valleys, and remote cave systems carved naturally into the rock over thousands of years. Survival in this environment demanded resilience, deep environmental knowledge, and an intimate understanding of every spring, canyon, and mountain trail. Within this vast landscape, certain places came to hold special meaning. Among the most respected were the forbidden sacred caves of the Apache. These caves were never viewed simply as geological formations. According to Apache traditions, some caves were closely connected to spiritual life, ceremonial practices, and knowledge passed carefully from one generation to the next. They represented places where respect, humility, and proper conduct were considered essential. This is one reason the mystery of the forbidden sacred caves of the Apache has endured for so long. Unlike archaeological sites that welcome scientific investigation, many sacred places remain intentionally protected. Their significance is not measured by artifacts hidden beneath the ground, but by the traditions that continue to surround them. For generations, Apache elders have emphasized that not every sacred place is meant to be explored by everyone. This idea can seem unusual from a modern perspective. Today, people often believe that every location should be mapped, photographed, and publicly documented. Yet indigenous traditions frequently approach sacred places differently. Some knowledge is preserved through trust rather than publication. Some locations remain respected precisely because they are not widely shared. The forbidden sacred caves of the Apache reflect this philosophy. Their mystery is strengthened not by dramatic discoveries but by the deliberate choice to protect them. That distinction is important. Over the years, explorers, historians, and treasure hunters have occasionally searched the deserts and mountains, hoping to locate hidden caves connected to Apache traditions. Popular books and documentaries have sometimes suggested that these places conceal remarkable secrets waiting to be uncovered. The reality is far more thoughtful. Within Apache culture, the importance of the forbidden sacred caves of the Apache has never depended upon hidden objects or forgotten treasure. Instead, the caves are respected because of the spiritual teachings associated with them. The land itself forms part of those teachings. Across the Southwest, enormous rock formations rise above endless desert valleys. Narrow canyons twist between towering cliffs. Hidden springs appear unexpectedly among dry landscapes. Ancient volcanic formations and weathered sandstone create natural shelters that have existed for thousands of years. In such an environment, it is easy to understand why certain places became deeply meaningful. The mystery of the forbidden sacred caves of the Apache cannot be separated from this extraordinary landscape. Nature itself shapes the experience. A quiet cave tucked beneath a cliff can feel profoundly different from the open desert outside. Sounds become softer, light changes dramatically, temperatures remain cooler. Every feature encourages stillness and reflection. For communities living closely with the land, these environments naturally became places where important ceremonies and teachings could take place. This cultural context helps explain why the forbidden sacred caves of the Apache continue to command such respect. They are not mysterious because strange events are expected to occur inside them. They are mysterious because their full meaning belongs to traditions carefully preserved across generations. As interest in Native American history has grown, the mystery of the forbidden sacred caves of the Apache has attracted increasing attention from people outside Apache communities. Unfortunately, this curiosity has sometimes led to misunderstandings. Some modern interpretations portray these caves as forbidden simply because they hide extraordinary discoveries. Others suggest they contain lost civilizations or hidden relics. Such claims often overlook the actual significance of the traditions. The mystery of the forbidden sacred caves of the Apache is rooted in respect rather than secrecy. Certain places remain protected because they continue serving an important cultural and spiritual purpose. Researchers studying indigenous traditions frequently emphasize that sacred sites should not automatically be viewed through the same lens as archaeological excavations. An archaeological site is often investigated to learn about the past. A sacred site may continue serving the living community today. This difference changes everything. The forbidden sacred caves of the Apache are meaningful not because they belong only to history, but because they remain connected to ongoing cultural identity. That continuing relationship explains why many details surrounding these locations are not publicly discussed. Respect sometimes means accepting that not every question requires an answer. Modern society often values complete access to information. Yet many indigenous traditions recognize that wisdom also includes knowing when certain knowledge should remain within the communities entrusted to preserve it. The mystery of the forbidden sacred caves of the Apache reflects this balance beautifully. It reminds us that curiosity should always be accompanied by respect. The Southwest itself reinforces that lesson. Travel through the mountains of Arizona and New Mexico, and it becomes clear how immense and isolated this landscape truly is. Towering cliffs cast long afternoon shadows across dry valleys. Eagles circle high above rocky peaks. Narrow canyon passages disappear into darkness before opening again beneath brilliant desert skies. Even today, countless caves remain hidden within these mountains. Some have been carefully studied, others remain largely untouched. Some continue holding cultural importance, known primarily to the communities connected to them. This reality gives the mystery of the forbidden sacred caves of the Apache an enduring sense of depth. It is not a mystery waiting to be solved through excavation alone. It is a reminder that history includes living traditions as well as ancient artifacts. The story also highlights an important truth about Native American oral history. Many traditions preserve relationships with places rather than simply recording events. Mountains, rivers, caves, and forests become part of cultural memory. They are remembered not only for what happened there, but for what they continue to represent. The forbidden sacred caves of the Apache belong to this living landscape of memory. Every generation that respects these places helps preserve a connection extending back hundreds of years. Perhaps this is why the mystery continues to fascinate historians and travelers alike. It challenges a common assumption that every historical mystery should eventually be solved. Instead, it suggests another possibility. Some mysteries exist not because evidence is missing, but because respect requires accepting certain boundaries. The forbidden sacred caves of the Apache continue to remind us that knowledge and responsibility often go together. Learning about another culture also means understanding its values. Listening sometimes matters more than discovering. Respect sometimes matters more than explanation. Across the mountains and deserts of the American Southwest, the mystery of the forbidden sacred caves of the Apache remains one of the most meaningful Native American traditions. It is a mystery shaped not by fear or speculation, but by reverence for places where generations have sought wisdom, reflection, and spiritual connection. In an age where almost every corner of the world has been mapped and photographed, these sacred caves quietly remind us that some places are valuable, not because they have been fully revealed, but because they continue to be honored exactly as they are. Mishipeshu, the water panther beneath the calm surface of the Great Lakes, where fresh water stretches farther than the eye can see. Generations of Native American communities have shared stories of a powerful being unlike any other. Known in Anishinaabe tradition as Mishipeshu, or the water panther, this mysterious figure has remained one of the most enduring and respected legends in North America. Far more than a mythical creature, the mystery of Mishipeshu, the water panther reflects the deep relationship between indigenous communities and one of the most unpredictable bodies of water on Earth. The Great Lakes are often mistaken for ordinary lakes. In reality, they behave more like inland seas. Together, they contain nearly 1/5 of the world's surface freshwater, creating an immense network of deep basins, rocky shorelines, hidden currents, and rapidly changing weather. Even on clear days, calm waters can transform into dangerous waves within minutes. For thousands of years, indigenous communities traveled these waters by canoe, relying on their knowledge of changing winds, seasonal conditions, and safe navigation routes. Life depended upon understanding the lakes. It was within this environment that the mystery of Mishipeshu, the water panther, took shape. According to Anishinaabe tradition, Mishipeshu, whose name is often translated as the water panther, was remembered as a powerful underwater being connected to the deepest parts of the Great Lakes. Unlike ordinary animals, Mishipeshu, the water panther, represented the immense and unpredictable forces hidden beneath the surface. The legend has survived for countless generations because it carried important meaning. At first glance, modern audiences may interpret Mishipeshu, the water panther, as a fantastic creature created to explain the unknown. Yet within Anishinaabe tradition, the story carries far deeper significance. The lakes demanded respect. Every journey across open water involved risk. Storms could appear without warning. Strong currents could overturn even experienced travelers. Hidden rocks beneath the surface posed constant danger. The mystery of Mishipeshu, the water panther, reminded people that nature possessed tremendous power and should never be underestimated. This message was both practical and spiritual. Many indigenous oral traditions teach important survival lessons through memorable stories. Rather than separating everyday life from cultural beliefs, they combine practical knowledge with moral understanding. The story of Mishipeshu, the water panther, reflects this tradition beautifully. Every retelling encouraged travelers to remain cautious, respectful, and aware of their surroundings whenever they entered the water. That lesson remains relevant even today. Modern ships equipped with advanced navigation systems continue to encounter sudden storms across the Great Lakes. Weather conditions can change rapidly, while dense fog, powerful winds, and unexpectedly large waves continue challenging experienced sailors. The mystery of Mishipeshu. The water panther therefore reflects something very real, not necessarily the existence of an underwater creature, but the immense and often unpredictable character of the lakes themselves. This symbolic understanding has helped the tradition endure. Unlike stories that depend upon physical evidence, the mystery of Mishipeshu, the water panther, continues because its meaning extends beyond literal interpretation. It represents respect for forces that humans cannot completely control. The landscape surrounding the Great Lakes reinforces this feeling. Towering cliffs overlook dark blue water stretching toward distant horizons. Dense forests line rocky shorelines where waves echo against ancient stone. Hidden coves disappear into morning mist while isolated islands emerge quietly from the water. Even today, these places inspire awe. Standing beside Lake Superior, the largest freshwater lake by surface area in the world, it becomes easy to understand why generations viewed the lakes with both admiration and caution. The mystery of Mishipeshu, the water panther, belongs to this remarkable environment. Researchers studying indigenous traditions often point out that many Native American stories preserve ecological knowledge alongside cultural teachings. The legend of Mishipeshu, the water panther, fits naturally within this pattern. Instead of presenting nature as something to conquer, the story encourages coexistence. The lakes provide life. The lakes demand respect. Ignoring their power carries consequences. These lessons shaped generations of travelers long before modern weather forecasts or satellite imagery existed. As interest in Native American folklore has grown, the mystery of Mishipeshu, the water panther, has appeared in books, documentaries, artwork, and museum collections. Unfortunately, some modern interpretations simplify the story into nothing more than a monster legend. Doing so overlooks its deeper meaning. Within Anishinaabe tradition, Mishipeshu, the water panther, represents balance between humans and the natural world. It reminds communities that wisdom begins with recognizing the limits of human control. That philosophy differs greatly from many modern attitudes. Today, technology often creates the impression that every natural challenge can be overcome. Yet the Great Lakes continue reminding people otherwise. Every year, rapidly changing conditions demonstrate that even experienced navigators must approach these waters carefully. The mystery of Mishipeshu, the water panther, continues carrying this timeless message. Its importance does not depend upon proving whether an extraordinary creature exists beneath the waves. Instead, it depends upon understanding why generations considered the story worth preserving. The answer lies within the relationship between people and place. For the Anishinaabe, the lakes were not merely geographical features. They were living environments that shaped daily life, travel, food sources, trade routes, and cultural identity. Stories connected people to those waters while encouraging humility before nature's immense power. The mystery of Mishipeshu, the water panther, became one of the most enduring expressions of that relationship. It transformed the unpredictable character of the lakes into a memorable narrative capable of teaching valuable lessons across generations. This combination of symbolism and environmental knowledge explains why the legend has survived for so long. It belongs not only to history, but to the landscape itself, every wave breaking against the shoreline, every storm forming across open water, every quiet morning covered by drifting mist, all reflect the same environment that inspired the story centuries ago. The mystery of Mishipeshu, the water panther, also reminds us that indigenous oral traditions often contain multiple layers of meaning. A single story can function as spiritual teaching, practical guidance, cultural memory, and environmental observation all at once. Reducing it to only one interpretation misses the richness of the tradition. Perhaps that is why the legend continues fascinating historians, anthropologists, and travelers alike. It refuses to fit neatly into modern categories. It is neither simply mythology nor simply history. Instead, it occupies the space where landscape, memory, and lived experience come together. Across the Great Lakes, where countless generations have navigated vast waters beneath changing skies, the mystery of Mishipeshu, the water panther, continues to endure. Whether viewed as a sacred symbol, a reflection of nature's unpredictable power, or one of the most compelling Native American mysteries ever preserved through oral tradition, its message remains remarkably clear. Respect the water. Respect the land. Respect the forces greater than ourselves. In the endless blue depths of the Great Lakes, where storms can rise without warning and ancient shorelines continue guarding centuries of memory, the mystery of Mishipeshu, the water panther, remains as powerful today as it was when the first stories were carried across the water by canoe, reminding every generation that some mysteries are meant not to be conquered, but understood with humility. The Ukenna horned serpent, flowing through deep rivers, hidden springs, and mist-covered valleys of the southeastern United States, is one of the oldest and most mysterious legends preserved by the Cherokee people, the mystery of the Ukenna horned serpent. Unlike ordinary snake legends found in many cultures, the Ukenna horned serpent is remembered as a being of extraordinary power, closely connected to the natural world and the spiritual traditions of the Cherokee. For centuries, its story has endured not because people sought to prove its existence, but because it carried important lessons about wisdom, respect, and the hidden forces of nature. The mystery of the Ukenna horned serpent begins in the ancient Appalachian landscape. Long before modern cities and highways appeared, the mountains of the southeast were covered in dense forests, winding rivers, hidden waterfalls, and countless freshwater springs. These mountains were home to generations of indigenous communities who developed an intimate understanding of every valley, stream, and forest trail. Water was central to life. Rivers provided transportation, food, and fresh water. Springs were often viewed as places of renewal. Deep pools and secluded waterways inspired both admiration and caution because their true depths were often impossible to see. It was within this landscape that the legend of the Ukenna horned serpent was carefully preserved. According to Cherokee tradition, the Ukenna horned serpent was no ordinary animal. It was described as an immensely powerful serpent distinguished by a great horn upon its head. Various oral traditions also speak of a brilliant jewel or shining object associated with the creature, making the Ukenna horned serpent unlike anything found in the natural world. These descriptions immediately capture the imagination. Yet for the Cherokee, the mystery of the Ukenna horned serpent was never simply about an extraordinary creature. It represented something much deeper. Like many Native American traditions, the story carried layers of meaning that extended beyond literal interpretation. The Ukenna horned serpent symbolized immense power that demanded respect rather than curiosity. This distinction is important. Modern audiences often approach mysterious legends, searching for physical evidence or scientific explanations. Cherokee tradition approaches the mystery differently. The question is not merely whether the Uktena-horned serpent existed exactly as described. The more important question is why generations considered its story essential to preserve. Throughout Cherokee oral tradition, the Uktena-horned serpent is closely associated with remote rivers, hidden springs, and isolated mountain locations. These places were often difficult to reach and naturally inspired caution. Dense forests limited visibility, while swift currents and deep water created genuine dangers for travelers. Within this environment, stories became powerful teachers. Rather than relying on written warnings, communities preserved important knowledge through memorable narratives. The mystery of the Uktena-horned serpent encouraged people to approach unfamiliar places with humility instead of overconfidence. Respect for nature became one of its central lessons. This philosophy appears throughout Cherokee tradition. Mountains were not merely collections of rock. Forests were not simply resources to be used. Rivers were not only sources of water. Each formed part of a living landscape deserving care and reverence. The mystery of the Uktena-horned serpent reflects this worldview perfectly. The serpent became a powerful symbol of the unseen forces that exist within nature itself. Even today, many rivers flowing through the Appalachian Mountains possess an atmosphere that inspires reflection. Morning fog drifts above quiet water. Hidden springs emerge beneath moss-covered cliffs. Thick forests surround narrow valleys where sunlight barely reaches the ground. Such places naturally encourage stories. Standing beside these ancient waterways, it becomes easier to understand why the mystery of the Uktena-horned serpent has survived for centuries. The landscape itself seems to preserve the legend. As interest in Native American folklore expanded, the Uktena-horned serpent attracted attention far beyond Cherokee communities. Writers, artists, and filmmakers frequently featured the mysterious serpent in books and documentaries. Unfortunately, many modern portrayals focused only on the creature's appearance, while overlooking its cultural meaning. The mystery of the Uktena-horned serpent is not simply a story about a giant serpent hidden beneath the water. It is a teaching about balance, about caution, about recognizing that nature contains forces greater than human understanding. Researchers studying indigenous oral traditions often emphasize that stories like the Uktena-horned serpent preserve multiple kinds of knowledge simultaneously. One layer reflects spiritual understanding. Another preserves environmental awareness. Another strengthens cultural identity. Together, these layers give the mystery remarkable depth. The legend reminds listeners that some places deserve careful respect, not because they are frightening, but because they possess significance beyond ordinary experience. This respectful approach differs greatly from modern attitudes toward mystery. Today, curiosity often encourages people to explore every hidden location, uncover every secret, and explain every unknown phenomenon. The Cherokee tradition surrounding the Uktena-horned serpent suggests another perspective. Some mysteries exist to teach humility. Not every question requires immediate answers. Not every place should be approached carelessly. This lesson remains surprisingly relevant today. Modern science has greatly expanded human understanding of rivers, ecosystems, and wildlife. Yet nature continues reminding us that complete control remains impossible. Floods reshape landscapes. Springs emerge unexpectedly. Mountain rivers remain powerful despite centuries of technological progress. The mystery of the Uktena-horned serpent quietly reflects this enduring truth. Human knowledge continues growing. Nature continues inspiring respect. That balance forms the heart of the legend. Another reason the mystery of the Uktena-horned serpent continues captivating audiences is its connection to oral tradition. For countless generations, Cherokee elders preserved the story through careful storytelling rather than written documents. Every retelling carried not only the mystery itself, but also the values surrounding it: respect, wisdom, patience, responsibility. These teachings allowed the story to survive long after the original storytellers had passed their knowledge to future generations. Today, historians increasingly recognize the importance of indigenous oral traditions in preserving cultural memory. While archaeology uncovers physical evidence of the past, oral traditions preserve relationships, beliefs, and experiences that artifacts alone cannot fully explain. The mystery of the Ukinda horned serpent demonstrates how these traditions continue contributing valuable perspectives to our understanding of history. Whether someone views the Ukinda horned serpent as a symbolic figure, a spiritual teaching, or one of North America's most enduring Native American mysteries, its significance extends far beyond questions of literal existence. Its true power lies within the lessons it continues to share. Across the forests, rivers, and mountains of the Appalachian region, the mystery of the Ukinda horned serpent remains woven into the landscape itself. The winding streams still flow through quiet valleys. Hidden springs continue emerging beneath ancient cliffs. Mist still rises from the water at dawn, just as it has for thousands of years. In these timeless places, the legend endures, not as a story demanding belief, but as a reminder that wisdom often begins with respect. The mystery of the Ukinda horned serpent continues to inspire curiosity, because it reflects something larger than any single legend: humanity's enduring relationship with the natural world, and the understanding that some of its greatest mysteries are found not in what we can fully explain, but in what we continue to honor across generations. The vanishing village legends across North America, countless Native American stories have been preserved through generations of oral tradition. Some describe mysterious beings, while others remember sacred places or remarkable encounters with the natural world. Yet among the most haunting are the vanishing village legends, stories that speak not of monsters or unexplained creatures, but of entire communities that seem to disappear without a clear explanation. Alongside these are the unforgettable tales of the ghost canoes of the Salish Sea, the hidden world of the Nunahi, the mysterious encounters surrounding Deer Woman, and the enduring stories of the Otter people. Though each legend comes from a different nation and landscape, they all reveal a common truth. Native American traditions often preserve history, morality, and cultural memory in ways that continue to inspire respect rather than certainty. The mystery of the vanishing village legends begins with a simple but unsettling idea. Imagine arriving at a settlement where people had lived for generations, only to find complete silence. Homes remain. Paths still exist. The land shows every sign that a community once flourished there, yet the people themselves are gone. Across various indigenous traditions, stories describing abandoned villages have survived for centuries. These vanishing village legends differ from one community to another, but they often share similar themes. Entire settlements are remembered as disappearing under circumstances that later generations struggled to explain completely. For modern audiences, the mystery of the vanishing village legends immediately raises difficult questions. Did environmental change force communities to relocate? Did shifting trade routes encourage migration? Were these stories preserving memories of historical events that gradually transformed into legend? No single explanation applies to every tradition. Instead, the vanishing village legends remind us that history often leaves unanswered questions, especially when written records never existed. For indigenous communities, however, these stories represent much more than unexplained disappearances. They preserve memory. They remind future generations that communities rise, change, and sometimes move on, while the land itself continues remembering those who once lived there. The mystery of the vanishing village legends therefore becomes a story about continuity rather than loss. The landscape remembers, even when people have moved elsewhere. Far to the northwest, another remarkable tradition has endured for generations: the mystery of the ghost canoes of the Salish Sea. Stretching between present-day Washington State and British Columbia, the Salish Sea is one of North America's most beautiful coastal regions. Forested islands, narrow channels, mountain backdrops, and shifting ocean currents create an environment that is both breathtaking and unpredictable. For indigenous peoples who traveled these waters by canoe, the sea demanded constant respect. It was within this setting that stories of the ghost canoes of the Salish Sea were preserved. Unlike ordinary tales of haunted ships, these traditions often describe mysterious canoes appearing silently across mist-covered waters. They are remembered not as objects meant to frighten people, but as meaningful symbols connected to memory, ancestry, and the deep relationship between communities and the sea. The mystery of the ghost canoes of the Salish Sea reflects the unique character of the Pacific Northwest itself. Morning fog can completely transform the coastline. Distant islands appear and disappear through drifting mist. Sound travels strangely across calm water. Even experienced navigators understand how easily the landscape can create powerful impressions. For generations, these conditions became woven into stories that encouraged respect for the water while preserving cultural teachings. The mystery of the ghost canoes of the Salish Sea continues reminding listeners that the sea carries both life and memory. Another enduring Native American mystery is the story of the Nanahi Hidden People. Within Cherokee tradition, the Nanahitin people occupy a unique place. Unlike frightening supernatural figures, the Nanahi Hidden People are often remembered as mysterious beings closely connected to the mountains, forests, and hidden places of the Appalachian landscape. Their name is frequently associated with the idea of the people who live anywhere, or the invisible people. The mystery of the Nanahi Hidden People has fascinated generations because these beings are not described simply as legends meant to inspire fear. Instead, they represent another layer of the natural world, one that remains largely unseen but deeply respected. Stories of the Nanahi Hidden People often emphasize kindness, wisdom, and protection rather than conflict. This distinguishes them from many supernatural traditions found elsewhere. The mystery reminds listeners that not everything meaningful can be easily observed. Some parts of the world remain hidden not because they are lost, but because they belong to realities beyond ordinary experience. Moving across the Great Plains and woodlands, another powerful tradition emerges through the mystery of Deer Woman. Among several Native American cultures, stories of Deer Woman have survived for generations. Although details differ between communities, Deer Woman is consistently remembered as a figure carrying important moral teachings. The mystery of Deer Woman is not intended simply to entertain. Instead, it encourages people to think carefully about their choices, their actions, and the consequences that follow. Like many indigenous traditions, the story functions on multiple levels. It is memorable because of its mysterious nature. It is respected because of the lessons it carries. The mystery of Deer Woman demonstrates how oral traditions often preserve ethical guidance through storytelling rather than written instruction. Rather than presenting abstract rules, the story allows listeners to reflect on personal responsibility and respectful behavior. This educational role helps explain why the tradition continues surviving across generations. Finally, among the many lesser-known Native American mysteries are the stories surrounding the Otter people. The mystery of the Otter people appears in several indigenous traditions, where otters are remembered as intelligent, playful, and deeply connected to rivers, lakes, and waterways. Rather than viewing animals as separate from human life, many Native American cultures recognize them as important participants within the natural world. The Otter people reflect this understanding. Their story has often encouraged respect for water, wildlife, and the balance that connects every living thing. Although modern audiences sometimes classify these accounts as simple animal folklore, they carry much deeper cultural meaning. The mystery of the Otter people reminds listeners that wisdom may appear in unexpected forms. Nature itself becomes a teacher. Animals become symbols of qualities worth understanding. This relationship between humans and wildlife appears repeatedly throughout indigenous traditions across North America. When viewed together, the vanishing village legends, the ghost canoes of the Salish Sea, the Nanahi Hidden People, Deer Woman, and the Otter people reveal a remarkable pattern. None of these mysteries exist merely to create fear. None depend upon shocking discoveries or dramatic supernatural claims. Instead, they preserve relationships between people and nature, between communities and ancestors, between memory and place. This shared philosophy explains why these stories continue surviving today. Archaeology uncovers artifacts, history reconstructs events, science explains natural processes, oral tradition preserves meaning. Each contributes something valuable. Together they create a richer understanding of North America's indigenous heritage. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson found within these enduring mysteries. The vanishing village legends remind us that communities leave lasting memories upon the land. The ghost canoes of the Salish Sea teach respect for waters that have sustained generations. The Nanahi Hidden People encourage humility before the unseen. The mystery of Deer Woman preserves timeless moral guidance, and the stories of the Otter people celebrate harmony with the natural world. Across forests, mountains, rivers, coastlines, deserts, and frozen landscapes, these Native American mysteries continue living through the voices of the communities that preserve them. Their greatest power lies not in proving the impossible, but in reminding us that history is carried not only through monuments and written records, but also through stories, traditions, and the enduring relationship between people and the land they have called home for countless generations. The enduring legacy of Native American mysteries. There is one question that quietly connects every mystery explored across Native American traditions. Why have these stories survived? For centuries, people have searched for physical evidence behind the Cherokee Moon-Eyed people, debated the meaning of the Hopi Blue Star prophecy, examined the Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files, investigated the mystery of the Lovelock Cave red-haired giants, wondered about the Inuit Tornit giants, reflected on the teachings of White Buffalo Woman, respected the forbidden sacred caves of the Apache, listened to stories of Mishipeshu, the water panther, remembered the Uktena horned serpent, and preserved the vanishing village lenge, the ghost canoes of the Salishni. Each mystery comes from a different nation, a different landscape, a different history. Yet together they reveal something remarkably consistent. These stories were never created simply to explain the unknown. They were created to help people understand their place within the world. Modern audiences often approach mysteries with one goal: to discover whether they are true or false. That question is understandable. Scientific research depends upon evidence. Historical investigation depends upon records. Archaeology depends upon physical discoveries. But indigenous oral traditions often ask a different question. What can this story teach us? This difference changes everything. The mystery of the Cherokee Moon-Eyed people reminds us that memories of unfamiliar encounters can survive long after written history disappears. The Hopi Blue Star prophecy teaches that balance between humanity and nature matters more than dramatic predictions about the future. The Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files encourage humility by showing that even experienced professionals sometimes encounter situations without simple explanations. The mystery of the Lovelock Cave red-haired giants demonstrates how archaeology and oral tradition can exist side by side without always providing identical answers. The Inuit Tornit giants preserve memories carried across one of the world's harshest environments, where survival depended upon passing knowledge from one generation to the next. The story of White Buffalo Woman reminds communities that renewal begins with gratitude, responsibility, and harmony rather than fear. The forbidden sacred caves of the Apache show that respect sometimes means accepting boundaries, instead of demanding access to every sacred place. The mystery of Mishipeshu, the water panther, reflects the immense power of the Great Lakes, reminding travelers that nature deserves caution, not confidence alone. The Uktena horned serpent transforms rivers and hidden springs into symbols of wisdom, encouraging people to approach the natural world with humility. The vanishing village legends preserve the memory of communities whose stories remain connected to the land long after they are gone. The ghost canoes of the Salish Sea remind coastal peoples that water carries not only life but also memory. The Nunihi hidden people suggest that not every meaningful part of the world is visible. The mystery of Deer Woman teaches that personal choices always carry consequences, and the stories of the Otter people celebrate the balance that exists between humanity and the animals that share the same rivers and forests. Taken individually, each mystery is fascinating. Viewed together, they reveal something even more remarkable. They form a map of values. Across deserts, jungles, forests, rivers, coastlines, and frozen Arctic landscapes, entirely different Native American nations preserve surprisingly similar ideas. Respect the land. Respect one another. Respect knowledge passed down through generations. Never assume humanity stands above nature. These themes appear again and again. That consistency is no coincidence. For thousands of years, indigenous communities lived in close relationship with their environments. Their survival depended on observing seasonal changes, understanding wildlife, recognizing dangerous places, and maintaining harmony with the ecosystems around them. Stories became one of the most effective ways to preserve that knowledge. A memorable story survives longer than a list of instructions. A powerful legend is easier to remember than a collection of rules. Every generation became responsible for carrying those lessons forward. That is why these mysteries continue living today. Not because every detail can be confirmed through excavation, not because every legend can be tested in a laboratory, but because the wisdom within them continues serving a purpose. Modern archaeology has transformed our understanding of North America's past. New discoveries continue revealing ancient settlements, trade networks, and cultural achievements that were once forgotten. At the same time, historians increasingly recognize the importance of indigenous oral traditions. Rather than dismissing these stories, many researchers now understand that they preserve perspectives unavailable through artifacts alone. An ancient tool may tell us how people lived, a story tells us what they believed, an archaeological site reveals where communities existed, oral tradition explains how those communities understood the world around them. Together, they create a fuller picture of history. Perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all. Not whether every legend can be explained, but how so many of these traditions have survived despite centuries of enormous change. Empires have risen and fallen, borders have shifted, languages have evolved, technology has transformed everyday life, yet these stories remain. They continue being shared by elders. They continue inspiring younger generations. They continue reminding the world that history exists not only inside museums or libraries, but also in living communities whose traditions remain strong today. Across North America, the landscapes connected to these mysteries still exist. The Appalachian Mountains still disappear beneath morning fog. The deserts of the Southwest still stretch beneath endless skies. The Great Lakes still produce sudden storms. The Arctic still tests human endurance. The Great Plains still reach toward distant horizons. The Pacific Northwest still hides its islands beneath drifting mist. These places have changed remarkably little compared to the civilizations that have come and gone around them. Perhaps that is why these mysteries continue feeling so timeless. The land remembers. And through oral tradition, so do the people. Whether viewed through the lens of history, archaeology, anthropology, or cultural tradition, these Native American mysteries invite something increasingly rare in the modern world. They invite patience. They encourage careful listening. And they remind us that not every mystery exists to be solved. Some exist to be respected. Some exist to preserve wisdom. And some continue living because they connect generations through stories that are far older than any written page. That enduring connection may be the greatest mystery history still cannot fully explain. History has a way of leaving behind questions that no excavation, document, or scientific discovery can fully answer. The Native American mysteries we've explored today have endured, not because they offer easy explanations, but because they preserve something even more valuable: centuries of wisdom, cultural memory, and a profound respect for the natural world. Whether it was the mystery of the Cherokee Moon-Eyed People, the teachings within the Hopi Blue Star Prophecy, the unexplained accounts of the Navajo Rangers' paranormal case files, the debate surrounding the Lovelock Cave red-haired giants, the guidance of the Inuit Tornat giants, the guidance of White Buffalo Woman, the forbidden sacred caves of the Apache, Mishipeshu, the Water Panther, the Uktana Horned Serpent, or the many enduring stories of the vanishing village ghosts. Cantugo and deities? These stories continue to live because they were never meant to satisfy curiosity alone. They teach respect for the land, remind us to value the knowledge passed down through generations, and encourage humility in the face of mysteries we may never completely understand. Perhaps the greatest lesson is this: not every mystery is waiting to be solved. Some are meant to be remembered. Some are meant to guide us. And some continue to connect people to places that have shaped human history for thousands of years. If you enjoyed exploring these remarkable Native American mysteries, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more documentaries, uncovering history's greatest unanswered questions, forgotten civilizations, and enduring legends from around the world. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop discovering the stories. History still whispers through the land.